just copied the link.
So I didn't even read that article. So you can comment on that article.
I don't remember.
Well,
like you tell me, you get me going. I can't come up with it myself.
Here we are, folks. We're starting off strong. Low Expectations, Season 2, Episode 9. Gary Lowe, it is great to see you.
Anthony.
And have you at my small table. Dude, we just awkwardly touched hands.
It's weird. It's a small table. I don't know where to put my arms.
We're told about it all the time.
Should I just do this the whole time?
Well, they were kind of blocking your face.
Nobody wants to see my face.
Anyways, we got all kinds of stuff to talk about on this episode, as usual. So if you can see, I've kind of cocked my chair.
Pivoted
my chair. So we're working on a couple things. We had a patron.
When you say we, you mean you. But yeah.
Patron gave me some decent ideas of things we can do. So this is not what our patron suggested, but I'm moving in that direction. So new name change is coming. We're going to do a special patron only episode here before the end of May and show them the new podcast art. June, we're out. We're out in June, and I'll be transferring everything over to the new podcast name. Same podcast, just better name, better art, better. I was going to say better everything, but it's going to be, you're still going to have us. You're still going to have us. But that's coming. So, yeah. So off the top here, I just want to say, listen, if you enjoy these episodes, even if you only pop into an episode and listen to specific things and pop out, go in, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us wherever you listen to us at, but especially YouTube. Just give us a subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to grow that channel on YouTube. And if you like anything about these episodes, even if you only like 2 minutes of the episode, subscribe to us. Yeah, and like 2 minutes of every episode.
Just click the button. So, dude, we got some love on the last episode.
Nice. Did you read any of these comments that I forwarded to you, or did you just be like, I'm not gonna read this stuff?
I read them. I laughed.
Dude, They're hilarious.
I love it, dude. They're triggering the algorithm. I love it.
So
keep triggering it.
The biggest thing that happened is, so in our last episode, I created a short out of this. You made the comment, and this was,
of course, it's me. I'm the one who gets blasted.
No, it wasn't just you. Yeah. But it was within the context of talking about what had happened in Portland with Portland PD and how they drew back from dealing with a criminal maniac who was chasing people away from enjoying their day and decided to do nothing about it. And we watched a news story about it. It was just wild. Go back and listen to the last episode. Watch the news story that we put out on the video. Just wild. So within the context of that, you made the statement that if you hate the police, you actually hate the public. You hate society.
Oh,
and
right.
I agreed with that. And I thought it was a very astute statement. And it's true. And it was made within the context of what we were talking about regarding the Portland PD. So I put that up on a short.
Yeah.
People lost their, I want to say people lost their minds.
Three people.
We had some comments. We got this one guy. He's been hitting up everything we've been putting out.
That's awesome, dude. I love it.
What did he say? Let me see. Find it. I can't remember his comment that he put for that specific one. I think it was, "You guys are pathetic."
Oh yeah, give him a shout out.
What's
his handle?
I don't know. I'm not giving him a shout out.
Okay.
He's like, "You guys are pathetic." On another one of our videos, he put out, "It's been ruled on that the police are not responsible for the citizens' safety, so stop the BS." That was,
cops are not responsible for public safety,
right? Yeah.
Okay.
So just crazy stuff that people are putting out there. And the bottom line is, listen, what Gary and I put forward in these episodes is that we believe that God has put people in place within government, and that includes law enforcement, to try to maintain some level of order on the evilness in the hearts of men. Okay? Because we don't live in a perfect society. We don't live in heaven. We live in this world, and God's established certain things and put certain things in place to kind of
try to keep the evil that's in the hearts of men at bay.
Yeah.
And one of those things is government. I mean, one of the primary things that government's supposed to do is praise the good person,
Yeah,
and crush the evil person. So if you say that you have a disdain for the police, something that has been put in place by God, then you are saying that you hate the public, you hate society, you hate something that God's put in place. So that's what we were saying there.
yeah, I agree. And you can hate like an individual police officer.
Sure.
I'm more talking about like the whole idea of policing,
Right. And
as it exists and is changing. You know what I mean? Like policing should continue to get better, which it has. There was a comment about like police officers would arrest a black person in back in the whatever 40s, 50s,
Right.
60s, that they would arrest a black person for going into a white only bathroom.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like that's terrible.
Not right.
It's not right. Even though that was the law of the land, a good police officer, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Or I'm going to find another career.
Right.
Or I'm going to work in a different area, which
Right.
is what could have happened.
Yeah.
Right? So we're not saying everything that police officers do is good. And if a police officer does something wrong, we crush police officers who do wrong things.
Right.
But there's so much push against policing, right? By a lot of people,
Yeah.
to include the media. Our little humble statements that are our own is just a little bit of pushback from that. That's all it is. I mean,
Right.
it's not, and it's our opinions, it's our beliefs, it's our, we don't speak for all police officers. We don't speak for all government agencies. It's just two cops who've been doing the job for a long time. And,
Right.
and we want to push back against the crazy narrative that policing needs reimagined.
Right. And what we're saying is that, just like you said, is not that police are incapable of committing bad acts. That
They do.
Individual officers, they do.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is that as a whole, if you don't,
As an entity,
as an entity, if you are
a government function, as a God-given grace, as a mercy of God on a wicked people,
to try and help restrain that evil, if you hate that, if you're part of the BLM crowd, if you're part of the anti-police, if you're part of the defund the police or eradicate the police or reimagine the police, and you're coming against something that God has established and something that is in place to help make society better, that's the purpose of it, then you are saying that you have a disdain for the public.
Yeah.
And saying that does not mean that we're saying that the police are incapable of doing anything wrong. Well, absolutely, they're capable of doing
And they
things
do.
wrong.
Yeah.
There's people there. It's made up of people who are capable of making mistakes, doing the wrong things, sinning. So that's not what we were saying in that statement. And one person wrote, "Not true. You can hate certain police behavior." To that post, when you said if you hate the police, you hate the public. Not true. You can hate certain police behavior. And I actually responded back to that. I'll respond here and there. Sometimes I'm like, it's not worth it. This person is unhinged, like nothing I say. And I just said, you're correct. You can hate bad actions from bad police officer. However, what we are saying is that if you generally hate the police, what they stand for, and the protection they provide to citizens, then you actually hate the public. That's what we were trying to get across there.
Yeah.
So,
and I can appreciate people who want to make policing better, but let's stay on mission. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So like, I want policing to be better than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I want it to be better continuously. Like,
Right.
as we grow as a society, I want us to get better. And that means that there has to be some changes from time to time
Yeah.
to make things better.
Every officer, every person in law enforcement that is worth their weight cannot stand when there are officers who are doing the wrong thing and are actually engaged in immoral or criminal behavior. And so,
If they're authoritarian, if they're like, talking down to everybody they meet,
Right.
like that's wicked. Like
Right.
that's not how a police officer is to be. There are police officers out there that are like that.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't like it either.
right. And to that end, like we would say, hey, if a police officer is engaged in criminal activity or engaged in a course of conduct where he constantly is being unprofessional, he or she is being unprofessional or doing things that are not correct in the profession, then yes, absolutely, we want them out. But we're saying generally the narrative against the police is way overblown in the negative sense.
For sure.
When 99% of the people who are doing the job are doing it to the best of their ability under extreme circumstances and extreme stress.
And they're generally doing the right thing.
Correct. And we talk about that
right.
all the time on
and
this
that's
podcast.
That's the reason for the podcast, is to push back against the negative narrative.
Right. And that's what we were doing recently with the Officer Schurr case, which is that trial is happening right now as we record this. That trial is happening right now at this moment as we record. By the time this episode goes out to the public, I don't know where they'll be in that trial, but that was one of the things we talked about on the last episode too. And I put out a short about that, and we were talking about how the suspect was drunk, or you mentioned, I made some statement about it, and you mentioned, and the suspect was drunk or something. And our friend, he wrote, gotta be drunk because he wasn't bowing down to you, right? And then he claims he went through the police academy and we were trained in hand-to-hand combat. Obviously, this generation of pigs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess that this guy didn't make it through the police academy, or actually didn't go to police academy when he's referring to officers as pigs. But he said pigs either don't get that or they are just too afraid to do their job the right way. So obviously this guy knows the right way to do the job, even though he doesn't do the job right now. Or if he is doing the job and referring to his coworkers as pigs, he's probably one of the bad apples that should be out of there.
He also said something about a taser being a non-lethal weapon.
Yeah, he grabbed.
It's actually a less lethal weapon.
Yes,
it's not a non-lethal weapon.
It's not considered non-lethal. It's a less.
I went to the academy
weapon.
a long time ago,
right.
So maybe they're calling it something different now. But
yeah, because he goes on to say he grabbed a taser, non-lethal, so that I guess gives you the right to go lethal, right? 5 question marks. No, it don't. Also, the guy's on top of this. This is my favorite part of this. He goes, also the guy on top of the screen, which was you. You are an idiot.
That's awesome.
And I hope to God you don't have a badge. That's what he said.
That's awesome.
About you. So when I read the comment, I quick scrolled up.
You wanted to see who it was. Which one was it?
I was like, was that me or Gary?
Oh man.
So I laughed out loud when I saw that. So I responded to our friend, and again, I think, there's a way to respond to these people and there's a way not to. I always try to kill them with kindness.
Yeah. I know we're kind people, dude.
I think sometimes when people watch these episodes or listen to these episodes, they're like, oh, Anthony seems like such a hard ass. I'm not. I'm actually, I try to be like a really, and there's for sure been periods in my life where I have not conducted myself in a self-controlled manner. But I try to be, you're laughing because you've been there.
I was in the car with you when you were in uncontrolled manner.
So, but I try to, remember, first of all, who I belong to, which is God, and what I'm supposed to be portraying because of who I'm following and who's bought and paid for me.
Yeah.
And so I just responded back. I said, thank you for your comments. The fact is, he was drunk. A .29 BAC, which is 3 times the legal limit. He also engaged in assaultive resistance that rose to a level where a reasonable officer would believe that they were in danger of serious bodily injury or death. And I got no response.
Yeah. I mean, I like the comments, man. That's funny.
love the comments.
That's funny.
Find them amusing. Honestly, most of the comments we get are negative.
Yeah, that's good.
They see a short. And again, that's the thing with the shorts. You're creating, you're trying to trigger the algorithms.
Yeah.
And it triggers people and they go nuts. But anyways, I thought it was funny to go back and those comments got some of the most feedback that we've gotten in a while. So I was like, I'll show them to Gary and talk to him about it.
It's funny.
Most of the time I just laugh at him. But speaking of the Officer Schurr trial, I did want to talk a little bit about what's been going on at that trial. I've been watching some stuff on YouTube. There's a lawyer on YouTube who is following the trial basically all day long because the trial is being video recorded. The sound is terrible. They could have done way better.
It's like aired live.
It's aired live.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this lawyer,
Like court TV or something.
yeah, this lawyer is he every day on YouTube he's following it live, making comments, suggestions. He's been super negative about the defense.
Okay.
He thinks the defense is doing a terrible job for Officer Schurr. He believes Officer Schurr acted reasonably, should be acquitted, and based on everything he knows now. But he just feels like the defense is doing a terrible job. He doesn't have very nice things to say about the district attorney either. I think the district attorney's last name is Becker. He doesn't have much nice to say about him either. But he also does a daily, like at the end of each court day, he's doing a daily update,
Like a recap.
okay, like a 20-minute to half-hour recap. So I've been trying to keep up with the case as much as I can. What's interesting, one of the most interesting things about this case are these experts they brought in, and we talked about this on the last episode. One of those experts is one of the same experts that testified against Derek Chauvin in the George Floyd case. So he's involved in this trial as well.
It's a good moneymaker.
Yeah. And these experts, again, I don't know, like every state is different how you get qualified as an expert. I don't know how you need to get qualified as an expert in this state in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where this trial is happening. But these experts, the one guy that's both these guys, I guess, have some law enforcement experience, but the one main expert, I can't recall his name right now. I'll look at it here shortly. Who testified against Derek Chauvin in a George Floyd case? He did like a total of 5 years in law enforcement, but I would love to know what he did. Like, what experiences did he have? What was he involved in? Was he involved in anything? Because it's so hard for me to understand how someone who has done the job would kind of sell their soul out for money to be able to come down on cops and judge them based on an unreasonable standard. Like what these guys are putting forth is unreasonable. So this article came from woodtv.com. Witness in murder trial. Schurr created Jeopardy that led to shooting of Lyoya, who's the suspect. This expert dropped this term during the trial and used it over and over again and called it Officer Created Jeopardy.
Okay.
And he really really kind of focused in on this and said that the fact that Officer Schurr pursued the suspect on foot instead of letting him go caused an officer created jeopardy.
Okay.
Of course, defense is arguing against that. This expert, Seth Stoughton, this is the one that was in that testified against Derek Chauvin, is one of the prosecutor's expert witnesses. He's a former Florida police officer. Again, I think he did at most 5 years, and I don't know what he really did, where he worked. And he's now a professor at the University of South Carolina School of Law, who has written extensively on police tactics. So he said he walked through each decision that Officer Schurr made during this. So they're looking at the video and he's walking through. So his opinion was that stopping the suspect because his license plate didn't match his car and attempting to grab the suspect when he got out of the car was reasonable. That was reasonable. Okay. But he questioned why Officer Schurr chased the suspect on foot, especially with a passenger still in the suspect's car. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've done that a number of times.
Okay.
I mean, he's your suspect of this stop.
Correct.
He's the driver of the car. He's going to get some tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he had some inclination that he was DUI.
Right.
So he's your guy. You can't hold two people.
Right.
Generally. And the other person in the car just stayed in the car.
Correct.
I mean, you chase the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say this. I think there are some differing opinions in law enforcement about this sort of thing. And what I mean by that is when I was in law enforcement, if I was in a 2-man car, we always had one person stay with the known. Like
Sure.
If you had multiple occupants in a car, one person stays with the car with the occupants, the other chases the rabbit. the person who rabbits out of the car. As a one officer car, I always trained when I was an FTO. I always trained my guys, hey, listen, if you're one person in a car and you have a person rabbit from that car and you have other people in the car, stay with what you have, keep the ground you have, call out the description of the person who's fleeing and try to get other units there to interact with that person. Now, that being said, it depends on the scenario, which you brought up, very good point. The fact that in this specific case, the driver is your suspect. It's not like you're pulling over the car and you have no idea what's going, other than
the passenger has done nothing wrong.
Correct.
There's no reason to. There's not no reason. There's less of a reason for you to interact with that passenger
than the driver.
Right.
And then when he gets out of the car and you start interacting with him and you can start telling that he's intoxicated to a high level, it becomes even more important to hold him at the scene.
Right. Or to go after him.
Right. The other thing that's different about this case, and again, when I would tell my trainees this, I'm like, every situation's different. But if you pull over a car and you have one or two people run from the car, but you also have one or two people in the car, keep what you have. Like, unless you have a specific reason, unless the person who ran from the car is the reason you pulled the car over because they're wanted, or they have a warrant or something like that. So it's so case specific. You can't just be like, this is the rule. And that's what this expert is saying. The rule is you don't chase anyone that runs from a car if you have other people in the car. Well, that might be a good tactic to use, but it might not be a good tactic to use. And in this case with Officer Schurr, the fact that he was actually interacting with the driver, going hands-on with him, and then he fled, any reasonable officer is going to chase that suspect. Any reasonable officer is going to chase that suspect past the car, past the suspect vehicle, even if there's someone else in that vehicle. Yes, can you make an argument that that tactical decision was maybe not the safest tactical decision? Sure. But that is not...
Policing is not safe. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. And it's not about what is the best tactical decision based on this expert's opinion. It is, what would have a reasonable officer done? Was it unreasonable for Officer Schurr to chase the driver in this case? 100% not.
Right.
Unreasonable.
It's not unreasonable.
So he brought that up, and he said, you also expose yourself to some unnecessary tactical risk when you run past the car, and now you have the other individual at the car at your back. Stout testified. Correct. You can make an argument that it's a tactical risk, that you can make a better tactical decision, but it doesn't mean that the decision was unreasonable
at the time,
and that a reasonable officer would have done it.
Right.
Letting someone flee from a traffic stop for an improper plate is certainly better than getting into a fight and losing or getting shot in the back by an assailant that you couldn't keep an eye on because you were running away from an occupied suspect vehicle, this expert said, Stoughton said. Again, okay, that's your opinion, but that doesn't mean that Officer Schurr's actions were unreasonable. And it also, if that's the way you did police work, you were probably a really bad cop.
Yeah, I would run from you every time.
Basically what you're doing is you're trying to set this precedent that, listen, if you have a suspect run from you, the risk involved with chasing that suspect outweighs everything else.
Right.
Well, no, because you're being paid to pursue the suspect. That's what you're being paid to do. The expert said, Stoughton, this expert said, Officer Schurr could have identified the suspect later and gotten a warrant. Well, maybe, but we know that the driver's license or ID that the suspect had wasn't his. So probably not. He probably would have never known who this guy was. And he said that Officer Schurr had tactical advantage over the suspect as they fought. Again, maybe there were points where he had the tactical advantage, but it turned into a point where he didn't have the tactical advantage. Once the suspect took Officer Schurr's taser and held it like he was going to use it.
Yeah.
Once Officer Schurr was in this fight for, I think it was 2 to 3 minutes, exhausted, he does not have a tactical advantage. He's getting to a point where decisions need to be made about greater levels of force because of the assaultive resistance of the suspect. This expert said there was no ability, there was no physical capacity for the suspect to incapacitate the officer with anything. Again,
Not true.
like, did you watch the video? Did you watch the video at all? He also said it would have been feasible in this case to give specific warning about the use of deadly force prior to the use of force. So he's making the statement that because Officer Schurr didn't specifically say, stop resisting, you're under arrest. If you don't stop, I'm going to shoot you, that it was then unreasonable.
Right.
Again, there is no state in our great land of the United States of America that says an officer must tell a suspect that he is going to shoot them if they don't stop resisting. Can you do that? Absolutely. Is it good to do that? Sure. Do you have to do that? No. That is not a requirement for using deadly force. I don't have to give anyone any verbal commands before I use deadly force. Is it a good thing to do it? Sure. Try to do it. But to say like he should have done it and because he didn't do it, it was unreasonable, and he acted in an unreasonable way, I thought was just disingenuous and just not a good idea or a good look for this expert. So we'll see what happens.
Who knows how it plays in the jury's mind.
Yeah.
But
I can't speak. It's interesting. In Michigan, the jurors can actually ask questions.
interesting.
So the jurors can actually submit questions during the trial.
Okay.
And I don't know how it works. I think they go to the judge and then the judge says, we have a question from the jury for this witness or whatever. And so they can actually ask questions. I don't think they've asked too many questions. I think one juror I heard asked a question of one of the witnesses, one of the defense witnesses who is a trainer at Grand Rapids, police trainer at Grand Rapids, if the officers get any DEI training.
Great question.
So again, I'm like, okay, you're missing the point. Like so in this juror's mind, the biggest question that he can ask is related to the race of the individuals involved.
Yeah.
And we talked about that last episode. We have completely vacated this idea of content of character and have gone to identity politics where how you look is more important than anything else. And hopefully that means that, you know, I hope he gets acquitted.
Yeah.
This case has been bothering me all week because this officer is on trial for second-degree murder.
Yeah.
He's facing a lengthy sentence for literally having to make one of the hardest, worst decisions in his life. And it is so sickening to me, and it bothers me.
Yeah.
Because as a guy who's still out on the street, still doing this job, it's hard. Like how do I, and as a leader, how do you motivate people to want to keep going? How do you motivate officers? Go out there, do the job, be proactive, engage with criminal element. When you see an officer like this, like literally fighting for his freedom,
first of all, fighting for his life, making a decision,
right,
which ended that of another, unfortunately, and now facing, the full
right now
of the
facing
law.
like
murder,
criminal charges. What's interesting about this prosecutor, I think his name's Becker, is right around the time that he was dropping charges on Officer Schurr. I don't know the timeline. There was another case that went in front of him on his desk where a bouncer at a bar shot and killed someone who threw a bottle at him. So my understanding of the case, patron who's kicked out of the bar throws a bottle at the bouncer.
Yep.
Bottle lands, breaks. Bouncer pulls out his gun, shoots. I think he killed, possibly just shot the suspect.
Okay.
And this prosecutor said, that's not enough for me to bring any type of manslaughter or murder charges.
Interesting.
And yet, for Officer Schurr, we're bringing that charge. And Officer Schurr, he's not just a citizen going about his day. He is a sworn police officer tasked with engaging with criminals and trying to keep the citizens safe. Like he didn't It's not like he was walking down the street and got into a fight with a guy and he had a taser and a gun on him and the guy took his taser, so he shot the guy. Like he's engaged in law enforcement. Like he's actually doing his job.
Yeah.
And these experts,
And even though it's a traffic violation,
initially,
it doesn't matter. Like the legislators wrote the law. We didn't write the laws. Police officers don't write laws. The legislature wrote the law that your license has to match your car.
right?
And you have to have a driver's license
Yeah.
to drive on this land.
Yeah.
If that doesn't feel like liberty or freedom, I mean, there are limitations to liberty and freedom that the government puts in place. But the police officers are just enforcing that. So whatever, man. It's brutal. It's brutal. And you're absolutely right. Like, why do the job, number one, or number two, do the job but just be chill? Just work your shift and roll out. You know what I mean? Like that's what could be the outcome if there's more cases like this that these guys get found guilty of.
But then you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
And
that's what I'm saying.
there's other cases that we're going to talk about. You're like you said, or you could just be an officer where you're chill. You just go, answer your calls, roll out.
Right.
But we'll see in one of these other cases that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. That's what they did.
They didn't
and
act,
now they're getting sued.
Right. They didn't act.
Because they didn't, they're saying they didn't act. We'll talk about that one right now. It's this wild case out of Oregon.
Yeah. Oregon, man. Good old Oregon.
Yeah, good old Oregon. This case suggests that officers now need to be able to tell the future. They need to be able to see through walls of houses and see what's going on. Like like they need to interact with someone who's possibly having a mental health crisis or high out of their mind on mushrooms. And because the police chose not to act, now there's a lawsuit. So let me find that case here.
So this happens right with the 2020, 2021, right? George Floyd, all that stuff.
Yes.
Lots of riots. Things happening.
It happened right around there. I found this on the website called the postmillennial.com. The article is titled "Judge Allows Psychedelics Enthusiast to Sue Oregon Police for Letting Him, quote, ride out his high after roommate called 911, claims cops were afraid of potential race riots."
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome.
So
First of all, let's talk about this. Psychedelics.
Right.
Probably not a good idea. It's probably an easy way into the demonic world, opening yourself up to all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
We can do a full stop there. We don't have to really get crazy into that, but that's what I believe.
Yeah. It's interesting because there are some people out there that I respect, like some podcasters out there, like SEAL team members and stuff that have really kind of like have been talking about psychedelics and mushrooms and stuff. And yeah, it's
as being helpful.
Yeah. So it's super interesting. I tend to agree with you that it's probably, yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to get into it either because I don't know enough.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know anything about it.
Talk intelligently about it, but it's an interesting thing that has been I've heard in circles of not necessarily first responders, because first responders obviously can't even get anywhere near this stuff, but guys
shouldn't
right. Guys who've served in the military who are dealing with PTSD stuff there's been discussions about it on some of those podcasts.
So this guy's studying that, right? He's studying like psychedelic, like.
Yeah. So this guy has Reliquy, or however you say his name. He's a double major in philosophy and film. So he is just getting a tremendous amounts of debt to probably work at Starbucks. A major in philosophy, like really, like, are you really going to philosophize and,
philosophize? That's awesome. Yeah, whatever. So, all right. So he's a college student.
Right. So a federal judge, ruled that a lawsuit against the Westland Police Department in Oregon can proceed, alleging that officers should have entered the home of a man reporting to be hallucinating on mushrooms and who later set himself on fire.
And cut off like fingers and stuff, right?
Oh yeah. So this guy is doing like these studies, and he undertook this like project on the relative benefits of psychedelic drugs. It was a philosophical investigation of the science of psychedelics.
Yeah.
I personally think it was just a way to get high. Because he also wasn't just doing psychedelics, he was also engaged in the use of cannabis when this happened. So he's like mixing and matching drugs, which is always a good idea. And his attorney is arguing that officers hesitated to intervene in the November 2020 incident. Again, this would have been right after George Floyd, just months after, due to concerns stemming from racial protests that year, following the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. However, attorneys for Westland Police maintain officers were unaware of Relique's race on the scene. The judge in this, the U.S. District Judge, is Michael Simon, and he allowed the case to move forward on other grounds. He said that
race had nothing to do with it.
Right. He's saying, I don't believe the police discriminated against this guy, but he's allowing it to move forward. So here's what happened. Relique's roommate, a female, calls 911 around midnight, November 14, 2020, while she's hiding in her bathroom. And she reports that, listen, my roommate's on drugs. He's naked. He tried to kick my door down into my bedroom. She also says she thought she smelled burning skin and she heard him shouting, I am God. So obviously a couple things could be happening. It could be a mental health episode, or it could be just completely out of his mind on drugs, or it could be a little mix of both.
Or a demonic influence.
There you go. You never know. Have you ever been on a call where you felt like there was something demonic going on?
That's a good question.
I mean, I guess you could say like every act of evil, there's something in the spiritual sense that's demonic or evil.
I don't know if I have.
Yeah.
I can't think of one.
I had an African guy one time. Like I can't remember what country in Africa he was from, but he I'll never forget being in the Sally Port of the police station, and he was putting a curse on me as I was getting him out of the car, and it actually like made the hair rise up on my skin, and I remember like specifically in my mind like rebuking it.
Yeah.
In the name
of
Jesus.
I'm a child of the living God. Your
like,
curse
I
means
remember,
nothing to me.
Yeah. I remember rebuking it, but it was heavy. Like
Nice.
you could feel the heaviness. And I've also, I think there's certain, and I know you've experienced this, where you've sat across from people in an interview or when you're at a scene and you're talking to them. And listen, like you deal with a lot of knuckleheads on this job.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You deal with a lot of knuckleheads, like people who are, they're drunks, they're high, they're making stupid decisions. They need to be held accountable, but they're just knuckleheads. And sometimes they even grow out of it and get older, and you see them and they're like, I was an idiot back then. Like, thanks for, treating me decent, whatever. But there are some times when you talk to people and you're like, this person is filled with evil.
Mm.
Have you've never had that?
I told that story about the grinding teeth thing while reading Miranda one time. That was a good one.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was just, maybe that was. But I'm not a big like feeling guy that like, you know what I mean? Like
I'm not a big feeling guy either, but like there's been times where I've like really fixated on certain people because I am like, this person is evil. Like they need to be stopped. Like I remember a case at the end of my career, me and my guys, we're doing plainclothes work, undercover drug work, stuff like that. And we used cars from somewhere else, and we're coming back from dropping off our unmarked cars, and we pull up to an intersection, and there is a female and a male in a bus stop, and the female is giving oral sex to the male in the bus stop in full view of the street. So we arrested both of them.
Okay.
All right. For the sex act in public. And my guys were like super tied up with, our investigation that night. We had multiple drug deals. Like we had charges, we had arrests. Like there was a lot of stuff going on. I was like, I'll take care of this mess, guys. So I interview the female, and she's a hot mess, drug user. And she claims that she had a drug debt to this guy, and he forced her to perform oral sex on him for payment. Like forced her in that bus stop with full windows to do oral sex on him as payment for the drugs. And I'm interviewing this gal, and she's dirty and she's gross. And I go in with this idea, like, I'm talking to a prostitute. That's what I'm talking to a prostitute in this interview. And I came out of that interview and I was like, okay, yes, she's probably engaged in prostitution. Yes, she's engaged in drug activity. But you're just having like one of those moments where you're engaged with someone who lives a completely different lifestyle than you, and you feel bad for them. Like you feel like a level of empathy for them and everything. So I get this guy in the interview room. This guy was straight up evil. I talked to him, and he was one of the most evil people I've ever interacted with. And I was obsessed with trying to get him on a drug delivery because I knew, based on my conversation with her, based on my conversation with him, that he was out there dealing. And I wanted so badly to drop a case on him. And it was just such a mess of a case. I don't remember what charges I brought. I brought charges. It was crap.
Yeah, because like minor stuff.
Yeah, because I just didn't have a good. I mean, it sounds terrible. I didn't have a good victim, and and
in reality, the attorneys aren't going to touch that case.
Right.
Yeah,
I didn't have a good case. I didn't have a good case at all. But I'm sitting across from this guy, and I was like, this is one of the most evil people I've ever talked to in my life.
Interesting.
Like I just
because of what he was saying.
Yeah, and I don't even remember like just the way he talked about this woman, the way he talked to me. Like this guy, literally, all he cared about was hurting people. That's all he cared about.
Yeah.
And my guys were like giving me a hard time because we'd be out running operations and stuff, and I'd see this guy, and I'd be like, we're stopping everything. Get on this guy. We're following him. Like I wanted a case on him so bad because and they're like, man, you really don't like this guy. I'm like, this guy's evil.
Yeah.
He's straight up evil. Like if we can do anything to stop him,
yeah.
like I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, within the confines of the law, obviously. Like I don't
got to say that.
I don't want people to think
I'll do anything to get this guy.
But yeah, so wow, that was a rabbit trail there. But so anyways, that's what's going on with this guy. They think he's hallucinating, or he's engaged in evil, whatever. So the police spend over an hour on a PA system and ringing the doorbell, trying to get him to come to the door. Because roommate makes it out. Roommate gets out of the house. So no one's in the house with him. There's no one in danger in the house. So this Sergeant Todd Gradwell is trying to make, trying to interact with this guy and get him out for over an hour. He doesn't come out. So Sergeant calls his captain, Otis Rollins, and this captain says, listen, based on what we have, a guy who is probably high, maybe has some sort of mental health thing going on, we're going to back away from the house and we're not going to make forced entry.
Yeah, move on to other things.
Yeah, he's not a danger to anyone else. He's refusing to answer the door, so they disengage, and the sergeant said, we felt that if we entered the house, we could make the situation worse, which is purely driven by our culture right now when it comes to,
especially back then.
Yeah, and when it comes to people that are, he was only high. He was only having mental health problems. Like, why'd you guys have to force the door open? No one else was in the house with them. So the decision to withdraw, and I'm assuming they had no mental health warrant, weren't able to get him. Like, I'm putting myself in this situation. So I get there, I have a roommate who's out of the house saying, hey, this guy's high. He might be harming himself. I don't know if he is or not. He's saying he's God. And then we try to make contact and he doesn't answer the door. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, do you have enough to kick that door?
So I wonder if they called mental health and had, tried to get a involuntary commitment, or if they had the RP. Like, there's no details in there about that.
I don't know how Oregon works. Here in PA, I'd probably have the roommate try to call crisis.
Yep.
Mental health crisis intervention, try to see if there's enough for us to petition for a 302, a mental health warrant, and go that route. But again, if crisis says, nope, you don't got enough, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're not going to kick that door down. So anyways, they make sure that the roommate has a safe place to go for the night. They say, we're just going to let him ride out his high or whatever's going on with him. And supposedly they told the roommate they didn't want to use excessive force, quote, in lieu of the current state of the police riots and all of that.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if they said that or not. Probably shouldn't have said that to the witness if that's really what they were thinking. But again, it's probably, it's an accurate response. They're just being open and honest with this with this woman.
Transparent. Isn't
they're
that the
being
new word?
transparent. So
Gaining the trust of the public.
inside the house, unbeknownst to the police, who now this case suggests that we should be able to know these things, is inside he's meditating
Okay.
by a fireplace when, according to his attorney, he came to while physically in the fireplace
Ouch.
after smoking cannabis. Reliquy said he lost control of his body as he lacked sleep and had been fasting. And also doing psychedelics.
Right.
And also
Cannabis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the following morning, roommate calls the police back after she discovers a severed finger inside the apartment. She goes back to the apartment.
Okay.
This guy's not there.
He's gone.
But there's a severed finger in there. So she...
Is that a clue that it was his finger or is it somebody else's finger?
his finger, I guess. So they...
Poor guy.
They located this guy like 50 miles away. And he had 30% of his body was burnt. And all but 2 of his fingers were burned or amputated.
Wow.
The lawsuit says that this police department, Westland Police Department, was obligated under their community caretaking function to locate Reliquy and determine whether he needs medical care, according to his attorney, Beth Cretin.
Okay.
Cretin, however, obviously Westland are saying, we had no idea what he was doing inside the house. We just knew he was high and or having a mental health crisis and or engaged with demonic spirits, as Gary says.
I love it, dude. I love it.
You know, who knows like what he was doing,
Yeah.
you know? And the crazy thing about this so let's flip it. Let's say they force the
kick
issue.
in the door.
They kick in the door.
He's got a fire poker.
He's got a fire poker and they smoke the guy.
Yeah.
Now
Riots ensue. Everybody's charged.
And he has another they have another lawsuit. To be clear, the suspect in this case was, I think, Hispanic.
Okay.
And one of the officers at scene, the reason they said they tried to tie in this racial aspect, because one of the officers at the scene asked what the race of the suspect was, which is just normal policing. Every state, every agency has to keep track of the races of people they're interacting with, whether they're victims, suspects, even witnesses.
And it's good police tactics. If he gets
know,
out of the house, who are we looking for?
Like, are we looking for a pasty white guy? Are we looking for a darker guy? Like, you're just.
Does he have no hair? Does he have lots of hair?
It's called getting a physical description.
Does he have glasses?
Right.
Like, yeah. What's he wearing?
You're getting
how old is he?
Physical description.
Yeah.
The attorney Cretin for this suspect is accusing the police of altering an initial police report by Officer Matthew Good, which originally stated that the officers were very concerned Reliquy was a danger to himself and had possibly overdosed on mushrooms. The initial report also said people under the influence of mushrooms can be a danger to themselves or others due to their extremely unpredictable state. However, the report was revised after Reliquy was discovered the next morning to say officers lacked knowledge he was an immediate danger to himself. Police explained the revisions, saying Sergeant Grodwell had reviewed the initial report and reminded Officer Good to ensure it was provable and not speculative. Again, this is like normal stuff. People want to say, oh, you changed the report after you found him. The report was probably submitted early that morning. Supervisor went home. Supervisor comes back in later that night, the next night or whatever, their next shift. Reliquy, the suspect, has already been found. Now they have all the answers to all their questions. And for the first time, the sergeant's reading the report and being like, okay, my officer put a lot of stuff in there. He's speculating on a lot of things. He's putting his opinion in there. We need to just rely on the facts.
Just the facts.
And so the sergeant's like, hey, you just need to, we need to put in there what we knew at the time, not what we think.
Or what we now know.
Or what we now know, yeah. So the Judge Simon ruled it remains a matter for trial to determine whether police could have actually foreseen the harm suspect suffered. And if the suspect had received medical treatment earlier, his injuries may have been less severe, the judge wrote. While allowing the case to proceed, Judge Simon ruled that there was no evidence police discriminated against the suspect because of his race. He also stated he would not permit exhibits of trial about the deaths of George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. So
That's
good
good
on him for that. I'll give the judge that. I think the whole thing should have been thrown out, but hey, what do we know? We're not judges. It's
all right. So basically, the judge is saying, would have his injuries been less if he had medical attention, which is obviously a yes.
Although they don't. But when did those injuries happen?
Yeah. Okay.
Because
no one's ever going to know.
There's no way to know when those injuries happen.
Yeah. Which kind of leads us to the next one about if he did get medical attention and the ambulance shows up,
right?
What happens?
What happens? That's a great segue.
Thanks,
Gary.
man, dude. I've been doing this for a little while.
You've been like taking notes from not me, someone else, but great segue. Yes, and that's this case that happened in Kansas City.
What state's that in?
Missouri.
Oh,
What?
I was hoping you would say Kansas.
No. Come on, bro. It's from local live KCTV 5. This article documents woman charged with killing Graham Hoffman. Bid officer tried to take ambulance. So, yeah. So jumping right into this, and here's a case where things were again, like, what do you want the police to do?
Right. It's always the police's fault, right?
It's always the police's fault. And this case now, I just before we got on here and started doing this episode, right now, the biggest question is, and what is being questioned by the press, by everybody, is why didn't the police search this woman? Is there a reason? Should have they searched this woman? Should have they found the knife before she got in the ambulance? It's so disheartening. So this suspect, she's been charged with first-degree murder, armed criminal action, third-degree assault on a special victim, and resisting arrest. The special victim is a fire department EMS worker for Kansas City, and his name is Graham Hoffman. What happened was on Sunday at the end of April, around 12:40 a.m. Officers see the suspect bleeding heavily due to a cut on her finger. They request EMS. She's walking along some sort of highway. The suspect refused to go to the hospital with the police officer, but agreed to be taken by ambulance. She gets loaded in the ambulance. The officer follows the ambulance as it's driving to the hospital. All of a sudden, the ambulance stops. Driver of the ambulance runs out, runs to the back, opens the door. Police officer sees a struggle inside the ambulance between the suspect and this Mr. Hoffman, this Graham Hoffman, that gentleman who died. And ultimately, what the suspect had done was stabbed the fire department EMS worker in the heart.
In the back of the ambulance.
And killed him. Suspect then jumped in front of the...
and this is a female suspect.
Yep. Jumps to the front of the cab from the rear of the ambulance, tries to put the vehicle in drive. She's unsuccessful. The officer grabs her legs. She slips out of his grip. She tries to run around the ambulance. The officer cuts her off. She runs back into the driver's seat of the ambulance. At that point, the officer pulled his duty weapon, grabbed the suspect, pulled her from the driver's seat and onto the ground. She then bit the officer on the arm hard enough that he had to seek medical treatment, and officer struck the suspect on the back of the head with his weapon until she released the bite. Can I just say this? The moment she tried to flee, you're looking at deadly force. She just committed a violent criminal felony.
Yeah. And who knows
at that point, he probably didn't know if he was dead yet or not. But at the very least, he knew she had stabbed him, and that it wasn't looking good. And now she's trying to flee the scene.
Yeah. A fleeing felon who had the ability to hurt other members of the public.
Possibly was still in possession of a deadly weapon, and is trying to flee. That's a deadly force situation.
That's easy to say. Look, in hindsight, in this situation, you don't know what happened.
And I'm not saying,
did he have a medical episode? Maybe he didn't. Maybe the officer didn't know that the guy was stabbed. It could have been thousand things.
We've talked about that on this episode before. Legally being justified is different. Every person's, you can be legally justified, but people can have a different moral line when they're going to pull that trigger. But I'm saying legally, based on the information I know now about this case, or I know at this moment about this case, the officer probably would have been completely justified in shooting and killing the suspect as she tried to flee. He chose
by the letter of the law. Doesn't mean he would be charged.
Yeah, by the letter of the law. Now, had he done that, who knows? And I'm sure he was thinking about all those things. What's interesting in this case is the suspect had been arrested only 5 days before. for allegedly biting a police officer from another jurisdiction during a separate arrest. She was charged in that one for assault and resisting arrest. So 5 days earlier, had assaulted a police officer, now out, not in jail, not kept in jail. And unfortunately, that decision by a judge not to keep her in jail and give her high bail, I assume, not give her high bail, caused her to kill this fire department EMS worker.
And the officers didn't search her.
So, again, that's the big question. And I watched a TV news anchor talk about and interview a lawyer, like, should she been searched? Should the police have searched her? And it's so exhausting to me why it's always the fault of the police. Yeah. Why do we always need to lay the blame at the feet of the police when the blame clearly needs to be laid at the foot and the feet of this suspect?
Yeah.
She's the one who made the decision. And what are you going to do? So you have an obviously probably uncooperative woman walking along the roadway bleeding. What is that? That's a medical emergency. Okay. Right. You have no reason to arrest that person. As far as we know, there was no reason to believe that she had a weapon on her. There's literally no reasonable suspicion or probable cause to pat that person down for weapons. And if they're being uncooperative and probably based on her actions and how she acted, probably not just being uncooperative, but probably being aggressive. Officer tries to de-escalate. She doesn't want to come with me. She'll go with an ambulance. Would you be willing to go to an ambulance? Yes, I'll go in an ambulance. Okay, you're bleeding bad. Let me get an ambulance here. Let me just, cross all my T's, dot all my I's, try to de-escalate this person. Okay, they're in an ambulance. They're going to get help. There's a reason why the police officer was following them to the hospital. There has to be a reason why. Whether they're concerned about how aggressive she was at the scene, whether they want to do some follow-up at the hospital to further investigate to see how she got this cut on her hand. They didn't pat her down. And they probably didn't have a legal right to pat her down. And if they would have patted her down and it turned into a fight and she pulled the knife and the officer killed her, then the officer could be looking at charges. Like, it's like, at what point are we going to get to a point where we're just like, you know what? You could have gone a myriad of ways on this call, and it could have ended in a myriad of ways. The bottom line is a bad person did a bad thing, and we need to hold that person accountable.
Yeah.
And not blame the police, not blame the fire department, not blame EMS. What do we, again, what do we want from our officers? If we want them at every call like this to pat people down, then that means that you're going to have more fights. You're going to have more interactions with the public that don't look good.
And that means that you have less freedom and liberty.
Correct.
It honestly does.
Yes.
I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want to live in a society like that. But are we going that way?
Yeah.
I don't think we are. We're not going that way for sure.
We recently had a case in our area here in Pennsylvania at a local jurisdiction where a person got loaded on an ambulance and produced a weapon while in that ambulance. Yeah. And it got really dicey really fast. Right. Sure, like there's times where I've, probably pushed the envelope where I was dealing with someone that there was some mental health things going on, but they were agreeing to go to the hospital, but they had a backpack and, pockets filled with stuff, where I've pushed the envelope and I've had no other reason to believe they're armed, but I'm just not comfortable releasing that person into an ambulance.
They're unarmed. They can't defend themselves,
right.
Really.
The ambulance crew can't.
Right.
And so, someone could come back and be like, well, you stepped out of bounds. You violated that person's right. You didn't have any reasonable suspicion to pat that person down.
Then you're sued federally.
It's like, okay, so I see this person, their pockets are filled with unknown items. They have a backpack. I'm just
passing them
on.
Go
ahead. Take them
along,
EMS. Yeah. I've also done that and left with a very bad feeling in my stomach. Like, I just let this person go with EMS. They don't seem to be in their right mind, but they're willing to check themselves in the hospital. My involvement here is done, but I have no idea what they have on their person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's an uncomfortable feeling,
For sure.
you know?
For sure.
So it's a wild time to be alive, Gary. It's a wild
That's
time.
brutal, man. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Especially like being like you can't defend, like you can defend yourself to a certain extent,
Right.
if you're unarmed, but like you're not thinking that if you're an ambulance guy, you're trying to help this person.
Yeah. And the other thing that's you know, you look at a case like this, and in certain cases, identity politics and identity race are so paramount. Like you look at the Officer Schurr case.
Okay.
Officer is white, suspect's black. You look at this case, and your victim is white and your suspect's black, and there's not one iota of identity or race politics being played in this case. Not one.
Because it doesn't fit the narrative that
Correct.
white police officers want to hurt those of different colors.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, why is that the narrative? Like, you know, we have to ask ourselves, why is the press pushing this narrative? I saw a meme today or yesterday where it was like a person giving CPR to a person on the ground, and the person on the ground was labeled racism, and then the person giving CPR was Democratic Party.
Oh man.
trying to keep it alive for their, you know, identity politics.
Right.
And thankfully I do feel like I do feel like the pendulum is swinging a little bit back in favor of law and order and just common sense. And but it's still, you know, you still see it being pushed hardcore. I also thought it was interesting. Recently, I was just at a training, and the trainer was talking about how body cams. He's like, who pushed for body cams hardcore? It's the ACLU. ACLU pushed for body cams super hardcore.
Okay.
And he's like, does anyone know the stance of ACLU on body cams right now? They don't like them.
They don't like them?
They don't like them.
Why?
He's like, they don't like them because it's showing the level of depravity, vitriol, hatred, violence being thrown at the police on a daily basis. And the ACLU is now like, we don't like body cams.
Let's get rid of them so
Let's get rid of them.
we can just write things that we want
Right.
you to believe to be true instead of
Yeah.
actually seeing what is happening.
Yeah. I will say the longer we have body cams, because I was a little resistant to them at the beginning just because I felt like it would affect guys' ability to do the job, and they'd be like constantly like thinking about what's on my chest and like, how am I saying it? What am I saying? You know, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, the way I would put it is, just imagine going to your job every day and you have a camera on you that records everything you say, like anything you mutter under your breath,
Right.
like any interaction you have, it records all of it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's in no other profession, right?
Is that going to make you comfortable? Like,
you
are you
imagine
gonna
if
feel
medical
comfortable?
doctors wore body cams during
Yeah.
surgeries.
Yeah. And we know 200 to 300,000 deaths a year at the hands of doctors. Not one person is holding a microscope to doctors and that profession at all. In fact, you have something that you need checked out, you might have to wait 2 months. No one's talking about that.
Right.
You know? But so I tell people, just imagine having a camera on your chest that records everything you do. Like, that's not going to make you feel real comfortable. And I will say that one thing I've noticed about cameras is that as a scene's winding down, or as you're trying to communicate with another officer about what just happened and what needs done and what needs handled, it does affect the way you communicate. Like, you can look at can look at an officer and you want to be able to tell them something, but you know that if you tell them that on camera
in a certain way, it's
in
going
a
to be
certain way,
yeah.
or if it has any bearing to the case at all, or has information, or you're asking a question about next steps or whatever, the defense attorney is going to pull that into court and be like, "Well, officer, you asked this question.
You didn't even know why you arrested him.
You didn't even know why. Like, you're discussing with the sergeant, like, what charges you had. So you arrested my client before you knew what charges you had,
right?
You know, all this silliness, you know, just to muddy the waters. So, like, there's times where, like, after a person's in custody and you want to, like, give direction or ask a question, you'll look at the officer and you'll point down to your camera and be like, later or whatever, because
like you don't want, you have a specific question to ask, but you realize that it might affect the case down the at trial, you know? So I think it does affect the way officers do their job, but primarily I think it's been a great tool.
Yeah, and it's
for
showing
law
that police officers are doing the right thing almost all the time.
It is also doing exactly what the ACLU hates, and that's showing the level of hatred and absolute disregard
And violence toward police officers.
towards police officers. I mean, some of these body cam videos, if you want to, you can go out and watch body cam videos and just watch how poorly police officers are treated.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's wild. I work with guys now who are like, I don't know how you've dealt with this level of just vitriol, hatred, for this long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sometimes I don't know how either. Not effectively.
Yeah,
at
right.
times, so.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I'll close it out there. We were maybe going to talk about pretext stops and Chicago. Chicago's looking at a new pursuit policy, but
We'll save that for another time.
or not pursuit policy, traffic stop policy.
Yeah.
We can talk about that some other time. We beat up on Chicago enough, but
They deserve it. They do dumb stuff.
I will say I have been fairly impressed with their superintendent, Larry Snelling.
Okay.
He you know, I think he could take a harder stance for his guys at times, but he does, you know, he has said like, listen, like pretext stops. Are we getting into this now, I guess?
I mean, let's do like a
brief. So pretext stops.
what do you call it? Like a teaser for the next
teaser.
time to come back.
Pretext stops are legal. It's basically using minor violations to sniff out bigger crime.
Sure.
And it's legal. There's nothing illegal about it. If you have reason to stop a car,
You have reason to stop a car.
Right.
You stop it and see what's there.
But of course, you know, the race baiting proponents and those who are steeped in identity politics are saying, oh, it's a tool that's used to stop black and brown people more than white people, blah, 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 blah. When half the time, these cars are so tinted out, or you're behind the vehicle, you have no idea
Right.
who's in the car. You have no idea the race of the people in the car, what they look like.
How many people are in the car?
Yeah, you're pulling the stop to investigate. Like, it might be a tint violation. It might be a registration light out. It might be a tail light out. It might be something simple. Those types of crimes those types of summary traffic violations have led to such great felony criminal charges and arrests. Like, I mean, how many times in your career did you pull a stop for very minor things and walk away with like felony, like a gun arrest,
charge,
drug arrest, you know,
a wanted robber
wanted subject. Yeah. Like, I mean, like off the top of my head, I can think of specific car stops I did for the most minor violations you could ever imagine. And a lot of times I had a suspicion about something else that was maybe going on. Like, I think of one specifically where I'm sitting in a high drug, high crime area. I see a guy, a young male, walk past me like 2:00 in the morning with a backpack on. And I'm like, and he's the only one out. It was actually pretty dead for that area. And he's the only one out. And I'm just sitting on the side, blacked out, sitting, parked, walks past me. I'm like, I wonder what that guy's up to. So I'm looking at him in my side view mirror, my rear view mirror. I'm watching him. He gets about a block away. A car pulls up, double parks in the middle of the street, picks him up. He gets into the car. So I follow this car. I'm like, man, I really would like something more than double parking on a street. Like, he kind of like parked in
where
an
there's no
intersection.
traffic. There's really no reason for...
no traffic was there, but he parked in the intersection. He was blocking the intersection. And I had nothing. So I used that to stop. And the guy with the backpack had a gun in the backpack.
There you go.
So, and that case went up to like the Pennsylvania Superior Court, I think.
Okay.
Because they
tried to suppress the stop.
They tried to suppress the stop, and they tried to suppress the reason I went into the car, which wasn't allowed to call this on the stand. The ADA said you can't call it that on the stand. You need to call it something else. I wanted to call it felony stretching. I do a passenger side approach. My front seat passenger, who I knew as someone who was engaged in criminal activity, when I'm talking to the driver and trying to obtain information and IDing people in the car, he literally leaned over
and touched the floorboard in front of him. Like, picture that, leaned all the way over and put his hands flat on the floorboard while I'm talking to him. And I saw that moment. And the moment I saw it, I was like, there's a gun in this car.
Yeah. Because he's stressed.
I was like, he's so stressed. Like, he cannot contain the level of stress in his body. What I think was happening is I think they were picking him up to buy a gun.
Okay.
My guess is my guy probably got in the car to sell a gun. And my front seat passenger knew there was a gun in the car and was stressed out of his mind. And so I used that time of night, high drug, high crime area, parking violation, this guy walking, getting picked up, all this stuff to pull everyone. There was like 4 or 5 people in the car. I pulled everyone out, patted everyone down, found this gun in the backpack. And yeah, they tried to suppress it up, and I won. I won the case. But yeah, pretext stop.
Yeah.
Completely legal. So they're trying to do away with this in Chicago. And it's
let's talk about it more next time.
It's going to make a mess. Talk about it next time?
Let's talk about it next time.
All right, we'll talk about it next time. So
Listen,
hey, again, if you like what Gary and I are doing, if you enjoy the podcast,
or if you don't, still subscribe.
Still subscribe.
And comment.
Listen, it helps us out so much. Get on YouTube. Get on YouTube and subscribe to us. We're pushing out a lot of content on YouTube, a lot of YouTube shorts.
When he says we, he means he does.
Yes. And our name change is coming. I think you guys are going to really love the art that you see. Again, that will go out to the public, to the masses. Our first episode in July. You may see stuff changing over before then, but we'll have our first episode under the new name in July, unless you're a patron. There's a link to become a patron in every single episode note, in the notes for every single episode. If you become a patron, that'll be revealed here before the end of the month in a special patron-only episode. We love you, patrons. Thanks for all you do for the podcast, and you make a lot of things possible for us. Subscribe, follow us, comment, give us heart emojis.
Ding the bell.
Ding the bell. I don't have a bell. I don't even know what that is.
I don't either. I just...